Hi, welcome to One Eyed Page. I'm Scott. We're going to be talking about You Like It Darker, the newest story collection by Stephen King, which just published last month. I have previously read 7 of the stories in here, which I did for the Stephen King short story ranking that I am in the process of doing right now. So there are 12 stories in here. I read 7 previously, read the other 5 now. I am going to rank the stories in this collection as I talk about them. For those of you who do watch the Stephen King short story rankings, which I will give a link to up there and also in the description, I started the ranking before this book was out, although I knew the stories that were in it. 5 of the stories that were in there had not previously been published, so I didn't have any opportunity to rank them before I got the book, which also brought up the question of like, would I be including them? Because I'm only including short stories in the ranking, not novellas. In the 5 unpublished before now stories in there are all novellas. There is one story, The Dreamers, which is kind of on the cusp. Could be a short story, could be a novella, but I've gone ahead and labeled it as a novella. Not that it's a necessarily true source, but Wikipedia has also called it a novella. So only the 7 short stories that I've already included in the rankings will be included in the rankings. Also, I ranked these after I read this book. There's a possibility that some of the stories may be higher or lower on the short story ranking than they are here, because that is what I ranked at the time and this is what I ranked at the time. That's a caveat with everything I do, is a lot of the times it's my opinion on that day. Not to say that I will decide one day, oh, one of my absolute top 10 favorite books is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. And then the next day I say, no, I hate that book. There'll be gradual up and downs possibly, but not drastic ones. But let's go ahead and get started with this. The first story, or the worst story in the book for me, is Red Screen. It is about a New York police detective, Frank Wilson, who uh, doesn't have a great relationship with his wife. She's a bit of a nag, and he talks to a murder suspect, and the suspect has things to say which strike close to home for Frank. And so when he goes home, he notices some things with his wife, and then it's a short story. It's for Stephen King. It's a very short story. Uh, it is a story that, except for some of the technological uh, things that happen in it, probably would have been more at home in Night Shift than in recent short story collections. I think even in Night Shift, it would be one of the lesser works. It's just, there's nothing that's particularly interesting about it. That's a phrase I use a lot for Stephen King stories that I don't really enjoy. But that's the thing. It's nothing new. It's a type of thing he's done before. You get that little shock ending, which isn't really a shock. Sorry, I had to turn off the air conditioning because of noise, so it's a little warm. Uh, the shock ending isn't that much of a shock. Less than 10 pages. Story number 11, also a shorter story, is Willie the Weirdo. It's about a young man named Willie. Uh, Family thinks he's weird. The only person he really seems to get along with is his grandfather, and his grandfather is not in the best of health. Willie also has kind of a bit of a obsession with death, so he is particularly interested in the process that his grandfather is going through. And like Red Screen, it kind of has that little bit of shock ending, but again, not really shocking. It's a well traveled road for King, and it's kind of like, now there are just so many potholes in this road now. The rating for this book overall is interesting because when I read the 7 short stories, which I did before I started doing the rankings, so a few months back, and then I thought about this book coming out, I was like, well, I'm not going to enjoy this book because while there are short stories as opposed to the novellas that I enjoy in this book, pretty much most of the stories fall in the bottom half of the ranking. The majority of the book is novellas, which we will get into later on. The thing with King is he oftentimes, and I think he has said this himself, although he has expressed that he expands upon it, but he has the what if. And this feels like a what if story, but it just didn't get expanded on. There was nothing of substance to it beyond, hey, what if this happened? But done. Okay, what does that do for us? Not much really, but it was not good. I was about to say it was okay. It's not really okay. It wasn't good. I may have ranked this worse than Red Screen before, but I do think upon reflection that Red Screen is worse than this. Number 10 is The Turbulence Expert. It is about a guy who's works for a organization who he's a turbulence expert. He goes on planes and because of special gifts he has, as well as other people, he kind of is there to prevent catastrophes. And it's just a story about his time doing that and also him recruiting people. And that's it. There's no big necessarily shock ending that we have in the previous 2 stories. Character is more interesting than previous characters. It's just, again, it's a well traveled road. And almost all the stories in here are well traveled roads with King. It's just, to me, the novellas, the trip is more fun. We're going to a different state. We're going to an amusement park. We're going to see the Grand Canyon, metaphorically, of course. Not actually doing that in any of these stories. Whereas the short stories, it's like, oh, we're gonna go pick up dad at the bar. He's drunk again, or we're going down to the neighbor's house to babysit their kid. It's just like, okay, I didn't really want to get in the car for this, but all right. And yeah, it's not bad, but didn't need to be written. Story number 9 is The Fifth Step. The Fifth Step, I have to admit, I actually like. It is about retiree widower Harold Jameson who has a man come to him. I believe I'm blanking on it. It's in New York, Central Park. It's Central Park. And basically does the fifth step of Alcoholics Anonymous uh, and basically unburdens himself on them. And the thing about this is that I really like Harold Jameson as a character. The writing is very good in this. It's just the ending of it, which is supposed to be a shock ending. It's not a shock at all. You can, maybe you can't, because I have seen people ranking the story pretty highly when they rank the stories in this book. I see the ending coming almost immediately, and it's not like I feel like I see that as the case all these short stories. I'm not somebody who like, oh yeah, I knew that was happening. But this one, yeah, I knew that was happening. I knew what was going to happen. I knew it was gonna suck, and it feels like it was written to be like, oh, look at that, what a shock, huh? It's like, no, man, you didn't need to do that. You're better than this, man. If there had been a different ending, the story probably would have ranked much higher. I liked the story, except I knew where it was going. I didn't like where it was going because it's like, yeah, we've done this shit before. I can feel you pulling me to this destination, and I don't want to go. As far as the short stories go, one of the better written ones, I think, but the ending is really what mars it for me. Number 8 is Finn. Finn is a Irish lad who is basically uh, kidnapped and tortured for reasons that he's not quite sure of yet. Appears to be a kind of a case of mistaken identity, and it's about his time there and his time getting out. Does he get out? And I just feel like Finn, the character himself, was interesting. I don't think any of the secondary characters were particularly interesting. If you have listened to previous short story rankings for me, you know that my feelings about King writing about criminals is that he's more often than not a miss than a hit. Well, these aren't your stereotypical American gangsters. Uh, they are still criminals, and I just don't feel like King has much of a handle on criminals as he might. Also, I do feel like this would have benefited from being a novella. I think most of the short stories that are in here would have benefited from it. Not Red Screen. I don't think you really could have improved that. Not uh, the Fifth Step. Not with that ending. If I'd read a novella length story with that ending, I would have been even more upset. But some of these stories would have benefited from being greater length. I think that's where King's strength is, which you'll see a little bit down the road. Number 7 is On Slide In Road. Uh, the Brown family, which is husband and wife, children, uh, grandfather who's a Vietnam veteran, and they're driving to Derry, Maine, and they basically take like an off route and they meet some men, and it's about their interaction with these men who are not good men. And I say good men, kind of sarcastically, because this is a good story, but it is definitely, and King is open about admitting this. It's not like he's trying to hide this, but it is very much an homage to Flannery O'Connor's "A Good Man Is Hard to Find." That's really the only thing that I would ding it on. I think it's appropriate length. I do think the character of the father is perhaps a little bit maligned more than he should be, but number 6 is Lori. It is one of two stories that is set in Florida that involve animals. We will talk about the other one a little bit. Uh, Another widower. That's the thing about King. A lot of these works involve older people dealing with mortality, which, I mean, considering King is in his, I think his mid 70s now, the mid to late 70s, it's understandable. I think that him writing about mortality, that's kind of in his wheelhouse now. He used to be really good about writing children. I don't think he's necessarily bad about writing children, but He's a man in his 70s. He doesn't really know what children in the 2020s are like. So a lot of times his children sound like mini adults, but he really is good with people facing mortality. But this man Lloyd, he his wife has passed away. He's not doing well. His sister gives him a dog, basically, uh, thinking it will help him, and he's resistant. But as is often the case when somebody receives a dog, it's like, all right, fine, we're pals now. And the dog is named Lori. It's about an encounter that he and Lori have. Basically, has to do with mortality. This one is just, I think, just a great story. Uh, it is also the top ranked short story in this book. The other five that we have to do are all the novellas. Stephen King has done plenty of great short stories, but I don't think at this point in his career that they are his best. Uh, Possibly his novels, obviously, but I think he does really good in novella range, which we will see. A short story with a dog in it. I mean, plus, if anybody has seen pictures of him and his dog, you know he likes dogs. Number five, our first novella, is Two Talented Bastards, and Bastards is spelled Bastids, kind of written in the main way. It is about a man basically telling his tale of his father, who is a famous novelist, and his father's best friend, who is a famous artist, and how they kind of came to their fame late in life. And there's a reporter who is kind of trying to find out why. And when the novelist's father passes away, because the artist is dead by the beginning of the story, the son finds basically something that tells how they became how they became. I gotta admit, the first half of this novella is great. It's typical King, just storytelling. Then when we get to the part where it's like, okay, this is how it happened, it's one of those things where it's like, man, the ending just doesn't work as well. It is something, and I won't give away what it is, but it is something that King has kind of touched upon before, not in the same way, but touched upon before. And I just think that this trope, I guess, he doesn't handle as well as others. Okay, story number four. Uh, the next novella is The Dreamers. It is set basically in the early 70s. A Vietnam veteran comes home, and first he gets hired as a temp as a stenographer, and he's quite good at it. Uh, but then he gets hired to help somebody with scientific experiences and having to do with dreams. And it's very good. It does kind of feel like it's not a retelling, but it almost feels like it's pretty much in the same storytelling universe, kind of like writing on the same storytelling fumes as Revival, because the two of them bear a lot of similarities. H.P. Lovecraft is mentioned in the story, and it has a little bit of resemblance to that too. Not in the writing, of course, because King is a far superior writer to Lovecraft, but in the exploration. I didn't particularly love the main character, but I understood him. Uh, Probably wouldn't personally have made it first person narrative, but it still works. I think is the shortest novella in the book. And like I said, it was one where it's like, is it a novella? Is it a short story? It's so close. I'm going with novella for now. And then we come to, I'll be quite honest, I rank these 3, 2, 1. The next second, I could probably switch the three of them. Any one of these could be number one, I think. But I'm going with them this way for now. By the time I actually post this, might have changed, but I don't know what to tell you. The Answer Man is about a man. The story starts in the 1930s. Uh, about a man. He's graduated law school. He wants to go to work in the small towns, getting resistance from his future in-laws and from his own father. But he finds this man along the road. Has a sign out that says "The Answer Man." Uh, I forget how much. Oh, I think it's $25. Basically, first two questions free, all your questions answered for 5 minutes. And of course, there are some caveats on the questions. You can't ask questions like, should I? But the man will basically answer any questions. He proves that he knows what he's talking about. And then the lawyer basically kind of lives his life based on what the answer man says. And it works out pretty well in a way. There are some things that don't necessarily go personally wrong for him, but aren't perfect. But then I believe sometime in the 1950s, he sees the Answer Man again. The price has gone up. I believe it's is it 100 or 200? One or 200, I think. And you get one free question. Uh, and I think the time period is short. I think it's 3 minutes. He gets a few questions out, but he doesn't really delve into the questions. And after this time, the life doesn't exactly go how he wants it to. And he does kind of blame the Answer Man a little bit. And after some events in his life, he kind of zones out a little bit until he meets someone who there there's a saying, somebody always has it worse, which is true. But also, I mean, it's like, yeah, but also, if that's the case, there's only one person who can feel bad because everybody else has somebody else who has it worse. And, but it does really kind of delve into that. And it says at the beginning of the novella that he meets the Answer Man 3 times. And of course, we have him meeting him at the end. And it kind of does explore, some people have it worse. It kind of explores just mortality again. We will see that again in the other novellas too, but probably, I think, the most emotional story in the book. It's also is it the last one? Yes, it's the last story in the collection. Number 2 is Rattlesnakes, which is kind of referred to as a sequel to Cujo. And I'm kind of like, sort of. Uh, Actually, it's because it involves Vic Trenton, who is the father in Cujo, the husband of Donna, father of Tad, of the Trenton family. In Cujo, the least interesting character. When you read Cujo, you don't really think about Vic at all because you have uh, 4-year-old Tad, uh, obviously, in strong mother Donna, and Vic is in advertising. Not to knock him as a character in Cujo, but he of the three in the family, he is the back of the crew. But he is now in his 70s. Obviously, Tad, uh, spoiler for Cujo, skip ahead about 10 seconds if you don't want to know. Tad died in Cujo. Uh, Donna has passed away. There is some stuff about their relationship because their relationship didn't necessarily go the way you might have expected it after Cujo, or maybe it did, but you may also have not expected where it ended up. So he is in Florida. It's during COVID times. He is basically living at a friend's place, and he encounters a woman who is pushing a stroller with her 4-year-old children, except there's no children there. It's just clothes, and her 4-year-old children died like 40 years ago because of rattlesnakes. Eventually, she dies from a supposed heart attack, and the stroller, which they bring back to her house, ends up back at his house. And there is a detective, not as bad as the detective in the next story, but there's a detective who's perhaps a little bit more suspicious of Vic than you would think. I I did think when I read this because I didn't read these necessarily in order that they came in the book. So I think this was the second novella I read. I read Two Talented Bastards first. I read this one and I was like, man, this detective's a dick. And then I read another novella and I was like, no, this guy's fine. This guy's fine. But it does talk a lot about the events in Cujo, the events that happened after Cujo, uh, and it's about grief and again, kind of mortality. It does kind of have. It's not a direct correlation, but the ending kind of has like a similar ending to me in the language to Christine, which is not a correlation I would generally make, but that's what I thought about when I read it. And it does also mention Duma-Key. Uh, there are characters from another story in this collection that make a brief cameo in here also. In the last story number one, novella is Danny Coughlin's Bad. It is the longest story in here. It's like 170 pages, so almost a short novel. Danny Coughlin has a dream that almost seems to be like a psychic dream, and it shows him something in this location. He goes to this location, finds what he expected to find, uh, makes an anonymous call to police using a burner phone, but he's not a savvy criminal, so it does get traced back to him fairly quickly. And the detective, who's the worst, uh, is a Frank Jalbert. King points out in the afterword, almost it's Javert from Les Miserables is what kind of this character is based on. As this character also has OCD, and he has a partner Ella who also thinks Danny is guilty, but is a little bit more open minded. And a lot of it is basically it's Jean Valjean and Javert going back and forth between these two characters, and there's a final confrontation. If you watch the musical, this would mean a lot more to you, but uh, it's not like shot for shot for the musical. You don't need to have seen this musical to know this. It's just like it's like sprinkles. Oh, this is cool too. So uh, I really like the character of Danny. I like the character of Ella. I don't like the character of Jalbert, but I find him interesting. Also, there's a character who's a young black kid that doesn't do a pickaninny voice, which I enjoy. King has seemingly gotten over his having his black characters do that type of thing. Uh, Character's name is Jesse Jackson, but they do know it's like, oh, like the politician, yeah. Uh, and also kind of like it goes over what it's like for somebody to be an innocent victim of societal shaming and pressure. And you know, Danny is innocent. He didn't do anything except report something, but people don't believe him because, like, yeah, I dreamed this, which, understandably is like, okay, you dreamed this. Have you ever had a second dream before? Nope. I don't know that we will see the character of Danny Coughlin again, although we might. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the character of Ella again. Somebody on somewhere I read kind of mentioned like Ella should get together with Holly Gibney, and it's like it wouldn't be that bad. Uh, I like the character Ella. I enjoy the character Holly. I know some people don't though. So uh, I could right now I could make the Answer Man or Rattlesnake's the number one story too. But for this moment, it is Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream. I will have to also admit this is the last story I read. I finished the story yesterday, so it could be a little bit recency bias, but I honestly enjoyed all the novellas. I just Two Talented Bastards didn't have a staying power. It started out great, it just didn't last all the way. The Dreamers was very good. I spent a little too much time rolling my eyes at the main character, which is fine. You don't have to enjoy the main character, but that's a little bit why, like, that's basically number two because it's almost a three-way tie with the other novellas. So still very good. I am going to give this a 4.5 stars. I am basing that pretty much on pages because this is a 502-page book. It has 7 short stories, which do not, I believe, equal more than 120 pages. Whereas the novellas, like 380 or so pages, and the novellas are great, and a few of the stories are great. A few of the stories are and a couple of the stories are like not good. But overall, if you go by page count, I say 4.5 stars. If you were to go, okay, just there's 12 stories that have equal weight, then I would probably put it down to a 4, but I'm not doing it that way. So 4.5 stars. So that is it for You Like It Darker. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll talk to you next time.